Hello and welcome to another video. In today's video we are going to be moving on a bit from the rear axle because we're waiting for parts for that. So we're going to be having a look at some of the steering bits. Since the last video, we've kind of rearranged where everything is in the workshop. Now, our actual chassis is on our fixed bench now, rather than our hydraulic bench. And we've made a shelf below it, which now has all of the rear axle parts on, all laid out neatly, without taking up proper bench space. Now, this is where our parts chassis was sitting before, but now that has been moved to a different location, which we can still get to if we need to have a look at it, but we think we've taken all of the parts off of it that we need, so getting it out of here just gives us a lot more space. Now, currently on the hydraulic bench, we've got a few steering parts, and that is what we'll be working on today. One of the first things we'll be doing is switching out the old steering wheel, which is quite badly cracked on all of the joins where it goes to the metal bits, and on the back, out for one from our parts chassis, which is in a lot better condition. As you can see, there's only really one or two cracks on the entire thing, although it is quite dull around the outside, which is why before this video we started polishing up a section of it here, which has made that look a lot better. So later on, before we put this on the tractor, we'll polish up all the way around it just to make it look a bit better before it goes on. Now, we've also got the steering column here off of our parts tractor. Now, the reason we have this here is because we'll be switching this onto our chassis, because the gear at the end of it is in much better condition than the one that is currently on our tractor, which we'll show you when we take that off. And also the bearing at the bottom is in better condition on this one than it is on our tractor. So we're going to attempt to switch this one out for the one that's on there already. We've now moved our chassis so that it's upside down across the two benches so that we can take out the steering column. Now, this is the wear I talked about. Massive chunks out of that gear on the bottom of this steering column, which is part of the reason why we want to replace it. Now, to do this, there's a split pin there, which I need to kind of bend these bits round, and then once I've taken out the split pin, in theory this should just be able to all come upwards, but I doubt it'll come out that easily, and if it doesn't, then we might have to turn it upside down and hit it through from the other side. Now, this gear does have a roll pin going through it, which we could just tap that off and replace it with the other gear, but we're not going to do that because we think the chances of getting that roll pin out are very slim, and it just seems easier to take the whole thing out. We've pulled the split pin out now, and as you can see, this is actually moving a bit, and we'll see how far we get, which is as far as there. Then good old Thor hammer will come in handy. I'll just tap it out from the bottom. If this gets too difficult, then we will just turn it over and tap it from the other side. But this is actually moving at the moment. Although that is starting to feel like a bit of a brick wall now. Yeah, it's not moving anymore, so we'll have a look at that, see if there's anything that's stopping it from moving, and possibly turn it over. We have a bit of a change of strategy now. The shaft is very dirty, which makes it very difficult to actually pull it through. So what we're going to do is take off this housing part around this bearing bit, leaving the bronze part that's in there on the shaft, like what we did with our other steering column, leaving the bronze part on there. Now, by doing this, it'll remove this point of friction that the shaft has to go through, meaning that there's only one, the bearing down here, that the shaft has to go through, and we've oiled and cleaned up the shaft beyond there, so that should go through there a lot easier. So what I'll do now is just undo these bolts, get this off, and then we can go back to tapping the shaft through, and hopefully it'll come out a lot easier. We have the steering column out now, that's here, and that uncovered a whole new world of grease and muck, even though we spent hours cleaning this. Now, while we have the steering column out, we thought that we'd take the opportunity to take off the dash, I guess you could call it, or the support that goes along with it. Then once we've taken that off, pretty much everything on the chassis that you can take off has been off. So I'll just grab the spanner underneath, which is a bit awkward. And something else we noticed is that the front of this support isn't actually flush with the front of this chassis panel. It's closer here than it is there, which is something that we'll try and move when we come to do this. And 60-year-old bolts, they are very loose actually, which might be a reason why it's possibly moved. And I'll try and find the other one, which is a bit difficult underneath. Very hard to locate the spanner onto it. Have I got it? No. There we go. And this one is relatively loose too, compared to what I would expect this to be. So I can just get these fully off, and then we'll clean up both the kind of dash stand and the area on the chassis around it. With the dash panel off, we've uncovered some nice original paint on here. Now, for putting everything back together, we're going to use the existing bolts and nuts, but we've got new spring washers, and we're actually going to put on washers which they didn't have before, but that is because the holes in the chassis are slotted, whereas the holes in this panel above it are circular, which meant that the bolts were kind of not sitting right because they were going into a slot. So we think putting the washer on there should help the bolts locate better and therefore be easier to get off in future. Now, speaking of the dash panel, we have back here, and we seem to have uncovered some more paint on this, or at least it definitely looks better than when we took it off. But this is a two-person job to get this mounted back on here. So me and Dad will do this off camera and then come back to you when it's done. We've now turned the chassis upside down again after we've bolted the dash tower on. Now I've got the other steering column here, and we've cleaned up and oiled the end that has to go through a bearing. So we'll just kind of lower this down towards it now. Give you a bit of light down there so you can kind of see what's going on. It's going to be a little bit difficult to get it through. Oh, there we go. Need to let it go to about there but no further, and then we need to bolt back on the bearing housing at this end. We have everything in place now. The split pin there is now fully through. Just need to split the two ends to tighten that up, and also just need to fully tighten these bolts here because we didn't quite tighten them all the way as we were assembling it. And once we've split the ends of the split pin, then we can decide where we want to go next. Now the next thing we've decided to do is actually put the steering quadrant on next, rather than going on to like the steering wheel or something else. And we've left the split pin ends together for the moment, just in case we need to adjust anything there when we put the quadrant on to change the angle or anything like that. But we were just doing a final clean-up of this quadrant, which is the one that came off this chassis, when we realised there's a massive chunk out of a tooth there. That is borderline non-existent now. And if we use this is just going to wear the quadrant out and wear out the gear on the bottom of the steering column. So we've had to resort to using the one from our parts chassis, which definitely wasn't easy because the track rod end was actually seized into the quadrant. Now we sacrificed the track rod end, as you can see, we just cut it straight off. And then very carefully using the impact driver, seeing as this is cast and we didn't want to crack it, we put some releasing agent on there, and then just very slowly with the impact driver took it out, and that is now pretty much out of there. And that means that now we can clean up this quadrant, which will probably take a while because it's caked in oil, and then get ready to fit this onto the tractor. Jumping ahead a bit now, we actually have the quadrant fitted to the tractor. Now going through the middle of the quadrant is this sleeve part, which both of them, the one from the parts chassis and from our actual tractor, had one end that was worn. This one here is the one from the parts chassis, which you can see the other end was really rusty, but on the one that originally came with our actual chassis, the other side was pretty clean, so that's the one that we've used. And instead of putting it back around so that the worn end is inside the quadrant, we flipped it over, so now the clean end is in the quadrant and the worn end is down there, where it won't affect anything. And that was to reduce the wear and movement in the quadrant kind of side to side. Another thing that we've done is fitted a new grease nipple on the back of the quadrant. So we weren't sure whether the original one worked or not, but as we've said before, we're going to change all of the grease nipples on this tractor as we go around. Now we did test this a bit for engagement, and it engages very well because these parts technically match up because they're both off of the parts chassis that we've got, so they engaged pretty well. There was a couple of high spots, but that was actually just old grease that had kind of solidified and turned into a kind of cement that we had to sand off. But now with that off, the engagement is very good between the two gears, and now the only thing left to do is grease up the grease point and also put some grease on the teeth on the steering quadrant, and then we can flip the chassis back over and be done with the underside, for now at least. With the tractor the right way up now, we set about cleaning up the rim of the steering wheel, which is a bit better, but really I think we could do with watching some YouTube videos on how to recondition or refurbish a steering wheel. That being said, this is still a mechanical restoration, not an aesthetic one, so we don't have to get this looking perfect, just making it look the best of the condition that it is in at the moment. Anyway, the steering wheel is the next thing to go on, and to do that, first we need to put the circlip at the bottom on, then put the new woodruff key in, then we can slide the steering wheel on, and then there's a washer and a circlip to go on top of that to hold it in place. So we'll do the first circlip now. Just got to go down into that slot there. I think that has seated right, so that's good. And next thing to go in is the woodruff key, which is very tight actually. It fits, but it's very tight. I'll see if we can possibly sort that off camera and make that fit a bit better, and then we'll come back to you. In the end, the woodruff key wasn't too difficult to get in. we just used a pair of pliers and just kind of squeezed it into the slot. And it's good that that's tight in there, because it will stop any movement from happening between the wheel and the shaft. Now what I'll try and do is line these up as they should be, which I think that is lined up, and then I can kind of give it a tap with the hammer, sorry, and hopefully this will go on all right, but it did take quite a lot to get it off in the first place, so we'll see. It's going on all right at the moment. Definitely didn't move the woodruff key. Difficult part, I think, will be getting it to move once we're past when we can use the hammer. And that is about now, so I need to find something that will go around there that we can use to tap down, since that's pretty much flush now. We now have the wheel completely on. We've got the top washer on and the top circlip. So that is completely assembled now, and there's no movement or anything. Very smooth steering. As you can see, it can turn on its own. Very smooth, very light. Obviously there's nothing connected to it, so it's going to be light, but it's good that there's no high spots or kind of resistance as it goes round at this stage, because that could mean that it gets amplified as more load gets put on it. But as I said, there's no movement on anything, no wear, so that's good that we've eliminated any wear that there was in this part of the steering system. But what we're going to do now is have a bit of a tidy up of some of the stuff that we've got out from doing the jobs today. We have had a bit of a tidy up already, but we just need to finish putting some things away, and then we will head inside before dinner is in the cat. But that is it for this video. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.